Hey everybody, we're here with kind of a different thing for the channel. Actually not that different, as I did something like this it was in 2019 I did something like this. I reviewed a bootleg Fallout novel, which kind of inspired me to do what I'm doing today, which is a kind of book review of a book that is tied in with a video game. So the video game came first, and then the book came out later to tie it in. So not something like The Witcher, where the Witcher series of video games is based on a book, or a book series. So, we have here today Star Wars Galaxies, The Ruins of Dantooine, by Veronica Whitney-Robinson. Now, I read this book, and I have some notes over here, so if you hear the paper and stuff. So, Veronica Whitney-Robinson, she has authored several books that are mostly tie-ins to other series, like she's done Forgotten Realms, Ravenloft, and Star Wars Galaxies. This is her only Star Wars book. In fact, it seems that she has quit writing novels altogether, as I can't find anything from past, basically this book. This book seems to be her last one. I don't know if she got married and changed her name, and she writes under a different name now, but I cannot find any more information about her. So yeah, Star Wars Galaxies, and Star Wars video games in general. Now, I was never really that interested in Star Wars. I was kind of just like the games, because back in the early 2000s, the games were good. It didn't matter if they were Star Wars, they were just good games in general. Like, this is basically how I got introduced to Star Wars Galaxies. This box right here. Star Wars Best of the PC. For $40 at Best Buy, you got 6 Star Wars games. You got Star Wars Empire at War, Star Wars Battlefront, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Star Wars Republic Commando, Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast, and Star Wars Galaxies. So yeah, you had a lot of good games back in the early 2000s. Not just on PC, you had a lot of good console games as well. You had Star Wars Bounty Hunter, you had, obviously, the Battlefronts, you had, I think KOTOR. Yeah, you had Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, you had Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast, you had, strangely enough, the Revenge of the Sith game was actually really good. Like, Star Wars had a bunch of really good games in the early 2000s for, like, the PlayStation 2 and, like, original Xbox. And there's, like, a weird one that's just called Star Wars Obi-Wan that I think a lot of people have forgotten about. So, yeah. Let's go over this book. This book, obviously, is a tie-in to Star Wars Galaxies, which, this video game novel is fairly weird, where it's a book based on a series that's set in the universe that was started by a movie. So, not really breaking my rules where the book came first, because, you know, it's just kind of weird to start this book. And MMOs are the kind of video games that kind of get the most books made of them. Like, obviously, people know World of Warcraft has a lot of books made on it. I think Diablo has a couple books. I think Guild Wars might have a book. Don't quote me on that. So yeah, the writer, Veronica Whitney-Robinson. She's a marine biologist, so that might be another reason why she hasn't written another book, is that, you know, her marine biology career has been taken up that time. So yes, let's go over, I guess, the prologue. So I'm not going to do this entirely on this camera. I'm going to go into a like video game background, like the background. I can't play Star Wars Galaxies anymore unless you do that weird Star Wars GMU thing, so I'm just gonna substitute a different Star Wars game in the background. But yes, Star Wars Galaxies, that was a very good MMO for its time. Star Wars Galaxies was a very different kind of MMO. You can't think about it like World of Warcraft or like Guild Wars. It was, the best way I could explain it is, imagine like a sandbox MMO. It's sort of like Second Life, but Star Wars only. It was like a giant, like, hey, live your life in a Star Wars universe. You could be anything you wanted in Star Wars Galaxies. You could be a bounty hunter, you could be an Imperial trooper, you could be just a dancer in a club if you wanted. Star Wars Galaxies was a very interesting time. And I played it. I played it for a couple years. I eventually quit it because my friend convinced me to come to World of Warcraft, which I probably shouldn't have done. Maybe I should have. I don't know. Just a weird decision. So yeah, what now? It's a bunch of advertisement in the back of here. Star Wars Frontiers and stuff. Just a bunch of old advertisements and stuff in the back of this novel. Yeah, obviously this novel now is non-canon. I don't think it was ever truly... I don't know the canon status of how Star Wars Galaxies was treated back in the old expanded universe days. Star Wars Galaxies was almost in like its own Star Wars universe. So yeah. So I'm going to go into just video game footage now, and then I'll discuss all the stuff about this book. And, you know, we'll go through chapter 1, 2, 3. I think there's 14 chapters here. There's 14 or 15. Alright, so you'll see a blip, and then we'll switch to some gameplay footage of just some random Star Wars games, and we'll talk about the story of this book and everything. Alright, so now we're going to get into the proper part of the review, not just me and my bad camera skills. But yes, as I've mentioned, the book is Star Wars Galaxies, The Ruins of Dantooine, written by Veronica Whitney-Robinson, with Haden Blackman. I don't think I mentioned Haden Blackman's name in the kind of first part of this video, but he was a developer on Star Wars Galaxies, so I don't know how much of the book was written by him. He was probably just giving pointers and tips and stuff, I'm guessing. If Veronica Whitney-Robinson or Haden Blackman, if you happen to see this video, you can tell me where I'm wrong. But Veronica Whitney-Robinson's name is first, and is bigger on the book, and Haden Blackman's, it says with Haden Blackman. So yeah. So, as I mentioned, Veronica has written several other things for Forgotten Realms and Ravenloft, and this is her only Star Wars book. I think this was her last novel she ever wrote, so yes. So let's get on to Star Wars Galaxies. I mentioned Star Wars Galaxies, great game, just really good game for the time. Star Wars Sandbox. Fortunately, it shut down, I think, like 2011, maybe 2012, somewhere around there. Over a decade ago, game, you know, disappeared. I know you can technically play it with Star Wars GMU, but that's not the same, you know? And normally, when I'm going to be doing these, the actual game is going to be in the background. Unfortunately, you're going to see some random Star Wars game. So yeah, Prologue. In the Prologue, we are introduced to Inquisitor Lyome Reg. Now, most of you are familiar with modern Star Wars are going to be like, oh, Inquisitors, those guys look really cool. They're like they're like kind of Sith Jedis, Dark Jedis. Yeah, they didn't, Inquisitors didn't look that cool before. Here's a picture of him from Star Wars Galaxies. I'll put that up. However, he does enjoy his work, and his work is to hunt down and to torture Force-sensitive peoples. Why? It's not really explained. It's just mentioned that he's supposed to torture them. Maybe to turn them into some type of weapon, like in modern Star Wars. Not really mentioned. He also finds mouse droids incredibly disturbing. That was just something that was in the prologue. Now, this book does explain why the Empire does have so many mouse droids. Well, not really anymore, because this book isn't canon. Yeah, so the reason the Empire has so many mouse droids is because the company Rabayan Calumny offered millions of them to the Emperor, or the Empire, at a very discounted rate, and the Empire was apparently so short on droids that they just bought them all, and that's why there's so many mouse droids working for the Empire. Now, the Emperor has this kind of like palace on Naboo, or his like getaway on Naboo, I guess because that was his poem, Naboo, and this is where the Inquisitor is, and the Inquisitor really hates the Queen of Naboo, the current queen in this book, which is Queen Calantha Urks. Queen Calantha something. I'll have a picture of her up then. So, the Inquisitor's walking around, and he then confronts some stormtroopers who are talking about how the Death Star had just recently exploded. And they're kind of like slacking off, you know, just talking about the Death Star and stuff. And, you know, he berates them like, hey, the Empire is still strong as ever, blah, 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 that type of stuff. And then another person comes in behind the Inquisitor. And then all three of them kind of straighten up and get, like, proper. It's Vader. And Veronica, you can tell Veronica, the writer, Veronica, comes from a very fantasy background, because you have to listen to her description of Darth Vader. It's great. Giant figure covered from head to toe in obsidian armor. On his chest plates, a series of devices blinked blue and red in time with his breathing and his heartbeat. His face covered by a grotesque helmet breath mask that resembled the skull from a dark god. I love that description of Vader because, like, it feels like a fantasy description of, like, someone, not really a science fiction description. But yes. Now, Vader confronts the Inquisitor. He's talking about them, how the rebels have stolen a very important holocron from the Empire. And he wants Leon Reg here to capture the rebels and get the holocron back. Vader then threatens the Inquisitor and he leaves. The Inquisitor then sends his best man to recover it. Change scene, but we're still in the prologue. We're changing scene. Nighttime with a woman in a forest. It's Leia. Luke then joins her. They talk about the Death Star explosion and then the holocron. Leia also sent her best agent to retrieve the holocron. So they're both fighting, both the Empire and the Rebels are fighting for this holocron, to acquire this holocron. That is at the end of the prologue. Now into Chapter 1. Now, the chapters in this book have no chapter names, which is kind of disappointing. I enjoy when authors give their chapters names. We are introduced to a new character, Dusk Mistflyer. This character is a self-insert, if you want to know. She's a human female, and she's with her colleague, Tendau Evadson. Evaden. He's an Ithorian male. Ithorians are like the kind of weird-shaped aliens that have like a head that protrudes outwards and upwards. I have a picture of it on screen. So, Dusk and Tendau here are Imperial bioengineers. And they're out on Naboo. But they went to a casino on Naboo. Dusk doesn't like being feminine, so she kind of dresses badly. Or not badly, but like covers herself up to not look feminine. Now, Dusk here has a tragic backstory. Her father died at an early age. Her mother then became very heavily depressed. Her brother became a pilot for the Empire, and then he died in a training accident, which made her mother hate the Empire. Dusk was really good at being a bioengineer in school. Like, really, really good at being a bioengineer. However, the author here goes on about how she's trapped in a male world, and she's a woman. Hey, look, guys, feminism in your Star Wars back in the early 2000s. Just something I thought I'd point out. I don't really care about, all that stuff. So, there's an exotic animal fight at this casino, and it makes Dusk here very upset. However, there was also a man who was watching Dusk, which made her very uneasy. Like, the chapter basically ends with a lot of description of different animals fighting. And that chapter was, I think, fine. I think it was pretty good at introducing all the character, or our main character here, Dusk. It tells about her backstory, how she works for the Empire, she's a bioengineer, yada yada, that type of stuff. So we move on to Chapter 2. After the fighting, she went to collect samples of all these animals. A Zabrak then accused her of collecting DNA to clone his dead Rex. A Rex is a large saber-toothed kind of cat thing, but it's also a porcupine. Very weird animal. When she refuses to clone his dead pet, he grabs her and accuses her of creating mutants. Like evil mutant things. Then the guards rush to her aid and threaten to remove him. she reveals in her head that her division does actually make mutants. She doesn't say that, though, but they do actually make mutants. The Zabrak that just kind of harassed her then asked her on a date, which is kind of weird, and apparently she was very offended by this. And so offended, she went to gamble. She was playing the spinner table when she noticed a lot of the men were staring at her. She then left the table, because this made her very upset that men were staring at her. She went to another table where there were less men, and she won at this table. And bought a weird blue drink. Then after she won, she went and bought a weird blue drink. The drink then gave her a headache, which caused her to look for a place to calm down, and then she found some private rooms. In these private rooms, they were playing a type of game that wasn't really standard in the casino. It was like a back alley game kind of thing. And she watched them play, and she had no idea what it was, and then a man came up to her. It was Lando Calrissian. Lando talked about the game they were playing. You bet things that are very expensive in this game. He was betting a ship. And she thought this was stupid. Well, it kind of annoyed her. Didn't really think it was stupid, but more annoyed her. But you get the idea. She's like, why would you ever bet something like that? And the Wookiee won the game. If you're guessing, the Wookiee was most likely Chewbacca. It doesn't say it's Chewbacca, though. It just says the Wookiee. She then left these back rooms and went to find her colleague, Tendal. He was talking to some weird Bothan lady. She then tried to approach them, but she got lost in the crowd, and she couldn't find Tendal. She turned around, distressed, and there was the man who was watching her from earlier. The man then grabbed her and rushed her to a spinner table. More gambling, and he made her basically call out numbers, bet on black, bet on red, that type of thing. And she kept winning for this guy. After them winning multiple spins, I guess, I don't know gambling. He then brought her to a bar where Amon Calamari, who was very drunk, almost punched her. Except the man who just rushed her over there, this guy, blocked the punch and kind of saved her. Then they went outside, where the man revealed himself as Finn Darktrin. Darktrin. Finn Darktrin. I think that's how you say it. He is a rebel spy. He needs her because she has a very high rank in the science bio stuff that allows her to go to places that other Imperials wouldn't be able to go to because, she has very high clearance, basically. And that's what he needs. That's what the rebel spy needs in order to get... I'm guessing he's the one after the holocron. He then tells her a bunch of stuff about her family and her past, and she's like, oh, how'd you get that information and stuff? And then Finn left. So, this chapter. I thought it was okay. I mean, casino scenes and Star Wars are kind of weird. Especially, with the recent movies and people not liking them. I think it was fine. I mean, hey, just walking through a casino. Oh, there's Lando. There's no real reason for him to be there, but he's there. And he's only there for a page, and then, I don't know, seems kind of weird. But yes, end of chapter 2. So on to chapter 3. Tendal was just wandering around the casino. He found Dusk, and he was questioning her because she seemed very distressed. He's like, is it your hormones? And stuff like that. Is it your human hormones, basically? Because, aliens and stuff. So, the author goes on about her being a woman and Tendal being a minority in the academy, and so that makes them friends. So, they went and got a drink, even though she just got a drink, and they talked about the casino. She did not tell him about the rebel spy. They went back into the casino and ended up at the bar again, and they talked about this place called Rory, and some others at the bar started talking to them about Rory as well. They wanted to gather some samples of the animals on Rory, because I guess no other Imperials at the time have done that. There's a lot of talking about getting there, or how they're going to get there, and about money, and if they have enough money to get there. And that is about the end of Chapter 3. And the casino. So it was a very short chapter in general. Kind of set up where we're going to be going next, to this place called Rory. Not really sure. Like, more feminism stuff, which is like... I don't really care about, like, the feminism stuff. Like, I know a lot of people make a big deal of things. I'm like, it's her book, you know. Veronica, it's like, if, you know, it's your book, do what you want with it. I don't care. Like, to me, you can write what you want. You shouldn't be dictated by someone. If you like writing this, that's fine. You know, I support everybody's ability to write whatever they want. Alright, Chapter 4. We're now on Rory. It's a moon, not a planet. And there's lots of weird, giant, deadly bats. That's the samples they want. They want a sample from one of these giant bats. Now, Dusk wants to do this mission alone because of some reason. They talk, and then Tendao kind of talked her out of it, talking about several other missions in their past that she went to do alone, and she got injured or something like that. And lots of bad things have happened when she's gone out alone. Now, the weird thing here is bioengineers don't carry weapons. However, Tendao brought a small blaster with him, a CDEF blaster. Traveling into the wilderness of Rory made her feel more at ease because she was away from all of those male eyes, from all the men looking at her. After a lot of walking, they stopped. The Tendao knows something is troubling her. They talked about the Empire and its place in the universe, and if it's good and bad, and that type of stuff. And then they talked about the Athorian religion, which is about the Mother Jungle. Eventually, Dusk tells him about the spy. He tells her, just do what you want and what feels good. Do what you think is right, basically. After they talked, they got up and continued their journey. Then, she lost Tendao again, somehow. But she found the bat's lair. And there's lots of bats in here, and they're called Borgles. Borgles? That's what it looks like, Borgle. Maybe I'm spelling it wrong or saying it wrong. And they drink blood. So, vampire bats. Gigantic vampire bats, basically. And they travel into this lair of all these bats, making sure not to wake any of them up. And there, at the end, on a giant throne of bones. I'm not kidding, that's what it says, throne of bones. There is a giant, like, mutant monster, evil-looking one. He had hypnotic eyes, and he was screeching at all the other bats. And then he turns and he looks at Tendao and Dusk here, and super screeches, and all the bats start coming for them. They managed to escape the cave and called the big one an abomination of evil. I'm wondering if this bat, it doesn't mention it, but I'm wondering if this bat is something that her division, her science division, her engineer, whatever they are, bioengineer division created. Doesn't mention that, but seems like it would be. And that's the end of Chapter 4. So, in this chapter, talks a lot about the Empire. We go to Rory, we discover one of the inhabitants. It's kind of interesting. I liked it. I always like when they introduce new monsters, like the Borgle here, the bats, the hypnotic evil one on the throne of like bones. It's kind of cool. Throne of bones. Still kind of very fantasy, if you ask me. Not really. I guess Star Wars is kind of fantasy and science fiction together, but yeah. Chapter 5. They went back to the town, but a tusk cat was hunting them. The tusk cat charged them,
and she tried to block it, but it bit her in the arm, causing her to fall to the ground. But she managed to hold her dagger up, right? She managed to hold like a dagger. She has like a, I guess like a survival knife, basically. And when the cat pounced again, she managed to get it with the knife. But however, whenever she kills it with the knife, it lands on her, and it's suffocating her. And if you're wondering what was Tendao during this entire fight with the Tusk Cat here, well, he was fumbling with his gun. He just couldn't get it to work right or something. He was just fumbling with it the entire time. He then moved to get the dead animal off of her, so that it wouldn't suffocate her. And then he treated her wound, because the Tusk Cat had managed to land a pretty good strike on her arm. Then they went back to town, for some reason not taking a sample of the Tusk Cat. Just kind of weird to me. I mean, they went there to take samples, and they didn't take one of the Tusk Cat. Maybe it wasn't important to them, I don't know. They took a shuttle back to Naboo. Then she lost Tendao again. Turns out he was being arrested. He was executed right there as a traitor. Finn the spy then grabbed and pulled Dusk away. He had been trading with a Bothan spy, trading information with a Bothan spy, and that was the Bothan she saw Tendao talking to earlier. Wow. Can't speak today. Dusk then decides to leave with Finn. End of chapter 5. Obviously, I'm heavily summarizing these chapters, because I think you should read this book on your own, but, chapter 5, that was okay. I mean, she got injured, so that's kind of interesting. Then she went back, and Tendao gets executed. It doesn't really explain how she lost him in the crowd. She just kind of lost him in the crowd, and, he's getting executed. It's kind of very fast. How did they know he was on that ship? I don't know. Chapter 6. They boarded another shuttle to Locke, a sulfur-based planet. Lots of dangerous beasts on the planet of Locke. They seek the aid of a space pirate named Nim. Several pages describing the pirate's hangout and its various inhabitants. He was a race of alien. Dusk didn't know what it was. However, I looked it up, and Nim is a race called a Fiorian. Dusk was actually eyeballing Nim. She was checking him out. She found her type. It is weird aliens. Finn wanted a ship, but Nim wasn't going to give him one. They wanted a really good ship to be able to fly out of here with. They eventually come to an agreement. Finn must get a star map from some Corsairs. Corsairs are kind of like a bandit, in a way. A bandit faction. Space bandits. Nim shows them to his armory, and Dusk changes clothes and gets annoyed when Finn watches her change. She gets very annoyed a lot, basically. End of chapter 5. So, new setting. We're on Locke, new character of Nim. New mission, get the star map. Yeah, I like that chapter. I found it interesting. On to chapter 7. They've been hiking for a while, and Dusk isn't actually that good at hiking, as she thought she was. Guys, she is trailing way behind Finn. She then went and captured a snake that was by her. Don't know why, she just randomly captured a snake. Apparently she wants to use it against the Corsairs. Now, the Corsairs are all aliens. There is no humans. One was a Nikto, and there were other of random alien types. I think they were mostly all Niktos, though. Now, they fought the Corsairs with their guns, their blasters, and even managed to use the snake against them. And while Finn was busy finding the holocron in their camp, Dusk was kind of contemplating what she had just done. She had just killed all these men. All these people, for a star map. Like, she had just killed a sapient being, and it was like, rushing through her head, like, oh god, I just killed people, because I guess she wasn't used to that stuff. Just then, a Corsair who wasn't in the camp came back and knocked Dusk to the ground. The Corsair then went after Finn. A good rough and tumble fight later, it ended with the Corsair dying and Dusk badly injured. Like, she's getting very injured in this story. I mean, she was just attacked by a tusk cat, and now she was thrown to the ground by this and battling this Corsair guy. And they eventually made it back to Nim's stronghold. There's lots of aliens at this stronghold now, and they're all at the cantina. And you won't believe who's at this stronghold now. Han Solo and Chewbacca are there, just randomly. They were trying to get Nim to join the rebellion. Now, they gave Nim what he wanted, and they got a ship out of him. A free ship. However, they weren't able to pilot this ship. This ship was being piloted by a Mon Calamari, and they were being escorted by Han Solo and the Millennium Falcon. End of Chapter 7. I feel that chapter just kind of, it shows Dusk getting injured. Yeah, she's on her mission. She got the star map. She's with Finn. And now, just randomly Han Solo and Chewbacca are there. I felt that part was just kind of random. So, Chapter 7. They flew into hyperspace. And in the ship, they found a crate, kind of like a present that Nim had left for Dusk. It was filled with all types of blasters. She told Finn that she'd never used a blaster before, and he went and showed her how to use the various types. There was small blasters, like this one. It's mentioned that you could take it apart and make it into 3 small pieces. You can conceal it and then put it back together. There was heavy blasters, just tons of blasters. Like pages and pages of describing blasters. She liked the DH-17 the best. They then came under attack by Imperials, most likely TIE fighters. It doesn't say what kind of ships they were being attacked by. So, their ship shortly is now crashing into Corellia. They went down very easily, basically without a fight. I guess the Millennium Falcon did a terrible job at escorting them. Dusk and Finn survived the crash, but Pirelli, who was the Mon Calamari, had died. Some of Dusk's ribs were now seemingly broken. She was in great pain. All I have to say is she is getting really beat up on this journey. Like, attacked by a saber cat and just constantly beat up. It's honestly insane. Using material from the wreck, Finn made her a type of harness or brace so that she wouldn't be in as much pain. And because they needed to hurry as the ship was sinking into the ocean of Corellia. That's actually the end of Chapter 8. It was this one's a very short chapter as well. I'm just kind of like, I don't know, just this short space battle and crashing into Corellia. Still not at Dantooine. Book's called Ruins of Dantooine, and we have not yet once been to Dantooine. Chapter 9. Frantically trying not to drown. They are swimming and swimming and swimming, and then they're attacked by a giant sea spider. And somehow Dusk managed to kill it with her blaster. She's just basically frantically firing at it with one hand, and she manages to hit it a couple times. So this giant spider crab thing is called a Dally Drake. Just thought I'd mention that. It's not really important to the story, but it's called a Daily Drake, something like that. They made it to the shore, and you will not believe who is waiting for them on the shore of Corellia's ocean. It's C-3PO. Yeah, he's just there. He's just there waiting for them. Oh, and it mentions that C-3PO hates sand. He doesn't say it's rough and it gets everywhere, but it does mention he hates sand. Veronica, you were years ahead of the curve on the sand meme. He says basically, "Oh dear, I hate sand." It's honestly, it made me laugh because I was just thinking about the meme. Now, they managed to get Dusk to a medical facility on Corellia at a rebel base. They gave her some Bacta. Good old Bacta. They then met Leia. Yeah, Leia was there. And they were talking about the holocron a lot, lots and lots about the holocron. They really needed it because the holocron contains a list of people who are basically traitors to the Empire. That's what's on the holocron. Just then, Luke had arrived as well. More talking about the holocron and the rebellion and the Empire and stuff. End of chapter 9. That chapter I felt was kind of... I mean, you got introduced to another creature, the Dally Drake. I guess since she's technically a traitor to the Empire now, she doesn't need to take samples of anything. And, she's just getting constantly beat up. It's crazy. And more just random, use of movie characters that just kind of feel randomly placed. So yes, now we're on to Chapter 10. New mission. They headed out to Dantooine. New ship for Finn. As well, since their last one, they happened to blow up. They flew to an Imperial outpost, which this is where he needed Dusk in order to get past this outpost on Dantooine. So they managed to get past the Imperials here, the Imperial officer, because of Dusk's rank in the Imperial bioengineers. And there's something about a woman being in charge, just more of that type of talk. So then stormtroopers checked the ship that they were flying, and they didn't find anything out of order, and they let her pass. But, like I said, an Imperial officer noticed that they didn't log in their flight records. So she got past the Imperial officer here by claiming, "Oh, if you let me pass, maybe I'll put in a good word and you can be the head of a future garrison." And then some flirting with Finn about how cool it was to get past these guys and how they were working together. And that's the end of Chapter 10. That was cool. Kind of showed how, she's using her rank to help Finn. And I thought it was interesting. I thought it was pretty good. Chapter 10 was pretty good. So on to Chapter 11. They left the Imperial base behind and started wandering through the wilderness. They were running through a field of flowers. I'm guessing it would look very beautiful. And there was a huge creature. A pricket longhorn. It was a pricket longhorn, and there was a whole herd of them. They tried avoiding the horde. Okay. Alright, so I have an energy drink because I'm starting to get tired because it's currently 12:30 now. So I'm gonna... Hopefully this will help me read better. Probably not. If wondering, I'm drinking a Gridlock. Extreme Red. That's the energy drink. The huge creature was a pricket longhorn, and in the field there was a whole herd of them. They tried avoiding the herd, but found out they couldn't, so instead they just moved very cautiously through the herd. However, when the matriarch approached them, Finn drew his blaster. Dusk pulled out her heavy blaster, right? This shocked Finn. She's like, because he was like, "Where did you get a heavy blaster?" And she's like, "A woman has to have her secrets." I don't know how she was having a heavy blaster on her, but, that's fine. It's cool. Now, they continued through the herd, and they eventually got to a cliff. They didn't need to use their blasters, as the matriarch just kind of avoided them, and continued on its way. So they eventually got to a cliff, and below them was a group of natives called the Dantari. Finn just wanted to kill them. He was like, I'm just gonna kill these people. But Dusk stopped him, saying that they're supposed to be a peaceful people, and you should care about this, because if you're just going to go about killing these people, are you any better than the Empire? You know, you're going to be evil. So I actually like this, because Finn's part of the rebellion, right? There's like, oh, the rebellion just killing people? I like stories that do that. I like stories in Star Wars that show, like, the good that the Empire does, like, not just straight evil, and, like, they show, like, the rebellion can be bad, right? Like, you know, like, there can be bad people in the rebellion. I don't think Disney Star Wars does that. I don't think anything Disney has put out has shown the rebellion as bad or any good in the Empire. I don't know. Then again, I stopped really caring about Star Wars after Disney bought it. Alright. They made their way past the Dantooine people to an abandoned rebel base. Supposedly, this base was abandoned because Leia told the Empire it was here. Which Dusk didn't believe, but if you do remember the movie, she did say the rebellion... She did say they are on Dantooine. So she did actually tell them about this base. Now, since this base was abandoned, it was filled with wildlife. And then Finn tells her that the base has been ransacked by Grey Talon smugglers. And they'd ransacked the base, and basically that's why it's all, like, basically worthless. Like, not even, like, a base worth reopening, basically. But they did manage to find some coordinates, and they followed these coordinates. However, while they were walking to these new coordinates, a Vorotor lizard charged them. Now that's a name, Vorotor. Voritor. After a frantic battle trying to kill this giant lizard, eventually they just ran away because their blasters weren't able to damage it properly. And while they were running, Dusk managed to pick up a thermal detonator and throw it into the mouth of the lizard. It then exploded, and this was a very powerful type of thermal detonator. It wasn't just a regular grenade. It was really powerful, and it nearly killed... It killed the lizard and nearly killed them. So this blast, like, burned Finn on his leg. Eventually, they got to some Jedi ruins. And these aren't, like, big Jedi ruins. They're described as, like, they're, like, falling apart Jedi ruins. And that's the end of Chapter 11. It was a pretty neat chapter, going through the field, describing some Dantooine people, Dusk nearly killing both of them, kind of describing more animals along the way, you know, kind of expanding the universe, but yeah. And that's the end of Chapter 11. Chapter 12. As I mentioned, these ruins were basically, they were all mostly destroyed. They were crumbling down. They weren't, like, big ruins that you'd want to really explore. However, they think the holocron is behind the waterfall, like a video game would be. Kind of interesting. And they were right. There was a giant cave system behind the waterfall. Dusk pulled out something called a spray masker, or a scent masker, and they sprayed that all over themselves. Now, for some reason, they decided to split up in these tunnels, even though Dusk knows that was bad, because splitting up in her previous things have gotten her in trouble. And this was probably the wrong thing to do, to split up, because there was a bunch of skeletons in this cave. Picked clean, bunch of skeletons. And she eventually found what was in this cave that killed those people. A giant rat. And the scent masker worked, as the rat just walked right past her. I guess the rat's blind, or maybe since he didn't smell like anything, it just kind of ignored her. She then found the holocron covered in soot. It's not mentioned why it's covered in soot, but it is covered in soot. Oh, and the giant rat is called a quanker. Yeah, quanker. Like the quanker. Like the clank. Or those from Ed, Edd and Eddy, those three girls in the trailer park, the Canker sisters. Yeah. Now, there was a bunch of these quankers in this cave, and they spit acid. They're rats that spit acid, and that's why, like, the skeleton's flesh was all, like, dissolved off. And they managed to kill 2 of them before escaping the cave. And that's the end of chapter 12. That chapter was okay. I like, I like when you introduce Jedi ruins. However, these are, like, described as, like, basically garbage ruins. There's no reason to be here. It's not like some giant temple complex or anything. Quanker, giant acid-spitting rat as an enemy. Okay, it's fine. Splitting up again, don't really understand why they did that. But finding the holocron covered in soot. Just finding it, like, I don't know, seems kind of weird. But yeah. On to chapter 13. After escaping the cave, one of the Great Talon members was outside waiting for them, telling her, "Hey, you stole our property." So she threw a vial of acid she actually collected from the quanker at him, burning his face off, basically. There were more Great Talons, so they went and had a big scuffle and killing all the Great Talons, and Finn was now very injured, and she was also injured as well. And she did her best to heal him, however, for some reason she didn't have many medical supplies. Enough to get him up and going, but not enough to fully heal him, basically. And they went back to the Imperial base. However, the Imperial base seemed to be abandoned. Like, she was looking around, was like, why is no one here? What happened? So, the weird thing is they wanted to escape, right? And I think there mentions how the Imperials are basically checking her ship, or they were all around her ship. So that's why they weren't, like, at the main part of the base. And in order to escape, they weren't taking their same ship back. They put a bunch of set timers for explosives all around the base, and blew those all up, and they managed to steal, like, an Imperial craft. So hey, parts of the recording started to break after this 40-minute part. So I'm just going to fill in what I said during the recording that broke. But yes, Finn and Dusk managed to steal some type of Imperial shuttle. And then I was talking about going into the end of the chapter and just talking about the chapter in general. With Great Talons, they both got injured. Exploding stuff around the base. Don't really know why. It didn't really mention why they needed to explode everything around the base. I mean, they knew she was in, clearance, right? Maybe they were going to ask what was she doing, or maybe they didn't. She just didn't want them to check and find the holocron on her, or on them, so I don't know. Chapter 14. More dialogue and more trying to heal him. Then they kissed. Yep, they just randomly kissed while flying through hyperspace. After they kissed, Finn revealed he was an Imperial agent this entire time. What a twist. I actually didn't see that coming. I thought he was going to be a rebel spy this entire time. And Finn told her how he had Tendau arranged to be killed. He was using her this entire time. He then stabbed her and used the escape pod to escape as they were being boarded. Turns out Luke Skywalker was boarding them with several rebels. Just in time, and Luke managed to get here just in time to save Dusk. That's the end of chapter 14. That was a very short chapter. Or end of chapter 13. That was a very short chapter. Like, it was just a lot of, like, flirting and stuff like that, and, like, talking about their mission and how exhilarating things were, and it was, like, here's one thing I don't understand, right? Like, if he's an Imperial agent, why did he need her to get clearance to go past the Empire? Right? Like, wouldn't he just be able to go up to the officer? Or maybe, right? Maybe they wouldn't believe him. Maybe he's like part of. It's not really explained, right? Maybe he's part of like a division that like the Empire, like common Empire soldiers wouldn't know about, right? Like, yeah. Maybe that's why he needed her, because like, oh, standard infantry units can't know about my existence. He's like secretive, stuff like that. Maybe it's not really explained. So yeah, end of chapter 14. Chapter 15. And it's the final chapter. We're at the Emperor's Naboo retreat. Finn is now meeting with Vader, and he tells him that he failed. Oh, so during the last chapter, he was actually uploading the holocron. This is something I forgot to mention. I forgot to write down in my notes, but he was uploading the holocron, and Dusk stopped him, saying, "Oh, we can't upload that. What if the Empire gets it?" And that's why he stabbed her, basically. So yes, and he's telling Vader how he failed to upload the entire holocron and how he feels bad, and Vader was going to kill him. However, since he managed to seemingly kill Dusk, Vader forgave him. All right. However, he didn't kill Dusk. We know she's still alive. And they're talking about the holocron and how he only managed to get like half of it. However, that was still good enough, and the fact he killed Dusk. So Vader didn't kill Finn. Then Vader told him he senses a lot of anger in Finn, and that is true. However, Finn's angry at himself. So, I don't know. Just kind of weird, some of the dialogue here. Now back to Dusk. She's now at a medical facility on some planet, and she couldn't stop thinking about Finn. She's like, "Oh, I want him. I need him." That type of stuff. And the rebels, including Luke, think Finn is dead because they couldn't find his escape pod, and they have no idea where he went. And Leia was there. Leia was there too, and like all the rebels were there. It's just kind of like random and weird. So, this is something very interesting. Is the last sentence of this book? It says, Dusk says this. The next part that broke over here is what I was referencing. I was talking about the last sentence of the book. The last sentence of the book reads, "When we meet again, we will both know who we are. We are a traitor and a rebel. May the Force help us both." Problem with that is, with this, Finn and Dusk are never used in another Star Wars story, so they would never meet again. And since they are all non-canon, their story will never be finished. They're basically in a purgatory. They were in a purgatory. They are never mentioned again in another thing. In fact, I mentioned Nim, the pirate? Yeah, he's canon again. Nim has managed to somehow sneak his way back into canon. I looked this up, and he is canon again. Dusk and Finn are not, nor were they, like I said, they never had another story about them. So, yeah. Let's actually review the novel and how it was. So, the plot. I give the plot like a 6.5 out of 10. No, 6.8 out of 10. Alright? I don't want to be too harsh. So, the plot felt very kind of 60s/70s dystopia. Like, that kind of, I work for the evil thing. I work for the evil empire or the evil corporation, but I'm good. So that can't make this thing bad because I am personally good. Something bad happens that affects the main character, right? It's like, oh, this thing really is bad. So therefore, I have to rebel against it. That's basically what this was. It was very dystopian, this plot, if you think about it, Now, I liked all the new characters that were added. I liked Dusk, even though she is a self-insert. -1 point for self-insert. I liked Finn. I think he was a pretty good character. Nim was a good character. That's all the only real characters they added. I mean, there was some other guys, but they were very minor. And so, yeah. So I like that. I liked how there was a lot of descriptions about like the blasters and how they worked and how the different blasters there were. I liked how many different planets there were. So yeah. So let's get into some of the bad. Shoehorn of major characters. It really felt like characters Leia, Han, Chewbacca, Luke were just really shoehorned into this story. Like you could remove them from the story. It wouldn't really matter. I mean, Vader's place was fine. Vader's place, instructing the Inquisitor and Finn, that was fine. But the other characters felt way out of place. And there was also like the weird tangents of feminism in this book. And like, I know feminism in Star Wars is kind of like a thing these days, but it's like, I don't know. I felt there was almost too much of it in this, right? Like I said, a writer can do whatever they want with their book, right? If she was instructed to write this book and she's like, and they were like, okay, do whatever story you want, right? I'm like, okay, I'm not a person who's going to go, oh, I hate this Star Wars now as a feminism. I'm like, okay, it's your book, it's your writing. Whoever the IP holder is can do what they want with it. I respect that. You can write what you want in your book or your story. It's your story. Do what you want with it. I'm not, I'm not one of these angry YouTubers that get angry at stuff like this. I just, I'm very freedom about this. And I have to say, I think this is a generally okay Star Wars novel. I think that if you like Star Wars, this is good. However, I don't think this is a very good video game tie-in novel. Right? So that's how I'm judging this. Is it good as a video game tie-in? I have to say no. It's not very good at tying into Star Wars Galaxies. I think because from what I remember of playing Star Wars Galaxies, I don't remember any of these characters. I don't think Dusk is even in the game, right? I looked. I'll probably look this up and I'll correct myself in editing. I don't believe Dusk is even in the game. Finn, I think he is in the game. And they don't matter in the MMO. Like if you think about MMOs and like the books that are based on, or MMOs that have tie-in books, they're always about the main characters. They're about. You look at World of Warcraft. They're about Thrall. They're about Jaina. They're about Arthas. They're about I'm forgetting all the World of Warcraft characters now. They're about Ted. No, Tedrassil's the giant tree place. They're about Sylvanas. They're about the main characters. These are just kind of like two chuckles. Just out in the world. I mean, they're fine characters, but they're not main characters. They're not. I don't know. I guess that's kind of how Star Wars Galaxies was. There was no like main characters of Star Wars Galaxies. Not that I can remember. I mean, because the main characters of Star Wars Galaxies are the movie characters, and so I'm guessing. So yeah, it's just weird. I don't know. What else we got here? What else did I write? I also don't like how Star Wars never used the characters of Finn Darktrin or Dusk Mistflyer ever again. And Leom Reg, the Inquisitor at the beginning, he was only mentioned in the prologue. He never came up again. And I don't think he was used. This Inquisitor was used again ever as well. At least not that I can find. So yeah, like I said, only Nim has managed to crawl his pirate way out of non-canon from some weird Star Wars Galaxies book into Disney canon. I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, I guess you can say that Dusk and Darktrin and Finn Darktrin rest in peace. How they won't be Disneyfied because a lot of characters Disney has brought back. Some have been pretty good that they've brought back. Others, they kind of ruined them. Alright, that's going to be the end of this review. Tell me what you think. Obviously I gotta edit this. But yeah, 15 chapters, Star Wars Galaxies, The Ruins of Dantooine. Hopefully the next book I review, I'll like it. I mean, I like this book, right? I like this book. Like, Veronica, if you happen to watch this entire video, I like your book. I'm probably going to go find your other books and read them too. Yeah. I don't really have much else to say. Have a nice day. I'll probably have another review eventually. Might do something weird. Might do one of her books next. I don't know.